At the beginning of the pandemic, so we never missed it. And I had people who had no idea and then I
My poems love you. Questions, comments, confrontations?
Questions, comments, confrontations. 40 years ago, when we first heard these words, especially confrontations, from world-renowned poet Etheridge Knight at our Beale Street Writers Workshop, we knew our lives as writers would forever be changed. He taught us to take responsibility for our words and not back down.
And as William Faulkner, another Mississippi native son, advised us writers, get it down, take chances. It may be bad, but it's the only way you can do anything good. So, in writing or doing good, we open ourselves to the bad, the slings and arrows of outrageous misfortune.
Not unlike our festival honoree, who we Memphians proudly call Tennessee Williams, who penned at times unnerving poetry for the stage. Even his stage directions are just as engaging as his dialogue.
So it is an honor to be here today to give this introductory tribute to Williams and introduce you to two other sons and one daughter of the Mississippi Delta who had an impact on us as writers. Three loud Black voices from the Mississippi Delta: Richard Wright, Etheridge Knight, and Indisha May Holland. Maybe after you hear their voices, you'll know why the caged bird sings. Three Black voices that still inspire questions, comments, and confrontations. Though the writers themselves have passed on, their voices remain behind to haunt us into paying attention to the least of our brethren, and sometimes stepping on toes in the process.
Richard Wright, Indisha May Holland, and Etheridge Knight, three Black pearls, harvested from the dark soil of the Delta. Three Black pearls, born of pain. But try as we cannot, nor should we overlook the agony that brought these jewels into existence. For we must acknowledge the pain in order to focus on the pearl. For pain is the prelude to the pearl. In an article entitled, "What Makes a Black Pearl Black?" by Rima Molina, the author says, natural Black pearl is more expensive and mysterious than its classic cousin. And for good reason. Although manufacturers can dye pearls black, it takes extremely rare conditions to form pearls that have that dark, eerily iridescent glow, as in the cases of our honorees.
Extreme conditions of violence, poverty, sexual abuse, sexism, racism, and religion all contributed to the dark and eerily iridescent glow of our extremely valuable and mysterious Black pearls we will cover in our presentation today.
I think it only fitting that we start with the writer whose glow lit the path for others to follow, Richard Nathaniel Wright, whose story was told in Levi Frazier's play, A Tribute to Richard Wright, a drama produced in Memphis and eventually in Paris as a part of an international festival on Blacks in Europe. Richard Nathaniel Wright, renowned author of Native Son and Black Boy, his most celebrated works, was born on September 4th, 1908 at Rucker's Plantation between the train town of Roxy and the larger river city of Natchez, Mississippi.
Both sets of his grandparents were born into slavery. He, however, was the son of Nathan Wright, a sharecropper, and Ella Wilson Wright, a schoolteacher. For a while, Richard and his brother were brought up by his mother in the strict Seventh-day Adventist home of his grandmother. That and the ill treatment by white Christians towards Blacks may have caused him to renounce religion early in life.
When he was 6, as noted in his biography, Black Boy, his father deserted the family and left him alone and hungry, which cloaked him with a deep biological bitterness towards his father, who he would not see for the next 25 years.
One of the most vividly told stories by Wright in Black Boy centers on him as a child playing with matches.
You stop that yelling, you hear? You know your granny's sick. You better be quiet now. You make more noise than any 4-year-old I didn't ever seen.
What are you doing?
None of your business.
Ooh, I'm gonna tell.
So, Mama don't care. Oh, fire! Yellow fire! Grandma, get to the kitchen. I gotta get to Grandma. Mama's gonna beat me. She's gonna beat me. I done something wrong. Grandma, get out. Get out! Gotta hide. Hide. We're under the house, Grandma. Your hair is... Oh, the curtain's on fire.
Richard! Richard, where are you, Richard? The house is on fire! Somebody help me find my child! Somebody! Help me!
Help me!
Dad, out of the house! Get him!
No!
Come here, boy!
No!
The house is on fire!
Leave me alone!
Out of there, you fool!
Turn me loose!
Did everybody get out okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Richard, do you know that if it wasn't for your brother, we'd probably all be dead? Thank the Lord he warned us in time. You almost scared us to death. This is one night.
I never forgot. I was lashed so hard that I lost consciousness. I was beaten out of my senses and later found myself in bed, screaming, determined to run away, tussling with my mother and father who were trying to keep me still. I was lost in a fog of fear. A doctor was called. My body, it seemed on fire, and I could not sleep. Packs of ice were put on my forehead to keep down the fever. Exhaustion would make me drift towards sleep, and then I would scream until I was wide awake again. I was afraid to sleep. Finally, I got well, but for a long time I was chasing whenever I remembered that my mother had come close to killing me.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see.
In his early years, after his father's disappearance, poverty was a constant companion for Wright, his mother, and brother. And in 1915, his mother, Ella, put her sons in Settlement House, a Methodist orphanage, for a short time. Richard was later enrolled at Howe Institute in Memphis from 1915 to 1916.
In 1916, his mother moved with Richard and his younger brother to live with her sister Maggie and Maggie's husband, Silas Hoskins, in Elaine, Arkansas.
This part of Arkansas was in the Mississippi Delta, where former cotton plantations had been. The Wrights were forced to flee after Silas Hoskins disappeared, reportedly killed by a white man who coveted his successful saloon business. This was one of the many times racism and violence reared its ugly head in Wright's life. For lynchings were in ever-present danger for any black male or female who dared get out of line. And having a successful business for a black man during this time was an example of getting out of line and could, as in the case of his uncle, lead to death.
And one morning, while in the woods, I stumbled.
Suddenly upon the thing. Stumbled upon it in a grassy clearing guarded by scaly oaks and elms. And the sooty details of the scene rose, thrusting themselves between the world and me.
There was a design of white bones,
Slumbering forgottenly upon a cushion of ashes.
a vacant shoe,
An empty tie,
a ripped shirt,
a lonely hat.
a pair of trousers,
Stiff with black blood. And the dry bones stirred, rattled, lifted, entering into my flesh.
The gin flask passed from mouth to mouth.
cigars and cigarettes glowed.
The whore smeared lipstick red upon her lips,
And 1,000 faces swirled around me.
clamoring that my life be burned.
And then they had me, stripped me.
And my skin,
Clung to the bubbling hot tar, falling from me in limp patches.
then my blood was cool,
Was cooled.
mercifully cooled by a baptism of gasoline.
And in a blaze of red, I leaped to the sky.
As pain rose like water, boiling my limbs.
Now I am dry bones, my face a stony skull, staring in yellow surprise at the sun.
Although quite intelligent, Wright did not attend school consistently until the age of 12, when he was enrolled in a 7-day Adventist school and taught by his Aunt Addie. At 15, he published his first short story, Voodoo of Hell's Half Acres, in a black newspaper.
In his last year in Smith Robertson Jr. High School, where he became valedictorian of his class, instead of writing his own speech, Wright was given a speech to read by his principal. Wright, though under a threat of punishment, refused to read that speech, but instead read his own. At 17, he moved to Memphis with his mother, who had had a stroke, and brother, and Wright was hired by a white northerner to work in an optical company.
Richard, I want to train a Negro boy in the optical trade. I want to help him, guide him. Reynolds, Pease, I want you both to break Richard in gradually to the workings of the shop. You'll show him how to grind and polish lenses.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, I'll be back.
Richard, take this broom and see how clean you can get this place.
But I was refused to train it, constantly demeaned and even threatened with violence.
Richard, Reynolds here tells me that you called me Pease, not Mr. Pease.
Why,
Didn't you call him Pease? If you say you didn't, I'll rip your gut strings loose, you black granny dodger. You can't call a white man no liar and get away with it.
No,
Well, get out!
I'll leave. I'll leave right now.
Humiliated and crestfallen, Wright determined to leave the South, which he did. This made him a part of the Great Migration to the North, and he and his family settled in Chicago. There he found respect as a writer, a man, and found friends of all races.
I was born by a river in a little tent. But oh, just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
I am black, and I have seen black hands, millions and millions of them. Out of the millions of bundles of wool and flannel, tiny black fingers have reached restlessly and hungrily for life, reached out for the black nipples of the black breasts of the black mothers, and they have held red, green, blue, yellow, orange, white, and purple toys in the childish grips of possession.
And chocolate drops and peppermint sticks, lollipops, wine balls, ice cream cones, and sugar cookies and fingers sticky and gummy.
And they held balls and bats and gloves and marbles, jackknives and slingshots and spinning tops in the thrill of sport and play.
I am black, and I have seen black hands, millions and millions of them, and they piled higher and higher the steel, iron, lumber, wheat, rye, oat, the cotton, the meat, the fruit, the glass, and the stone, until there was too much to be used. And they grabbed guns and slung them on their shoulders and marched and groped in trenches and fought and killed and conquered nations who were customers for the goods black hands had made. And again, black hands stacked goods higher and higher until there was too much to be used.
Too much to be used.
I am black, and I have seen black hands, millions and millions of them. And the black hands struck desperately out in defense of life, and there was blood. But the enraged bosses decreed that this too was wrong.
I am black, and I have seen black hands raised in fists of revolt, side by side with white workers, and someday, and it is only this which sustains me, someday there shall be millions and millions of them on some red day in a burst of fists on a new horizon.
Richard Nathaniel Wright had lived in the Mississippi Delta, spending time in Mississippi, Tennessee, and Arkansas, with all three making a major impact on him as a person and as a writer. He was the author of over 16 books and over 4,000 haiku. A caged bird from the Delta who continued to sing long after his flight to freedom.
I had never read a book written by an African American. I didn't know that black people could write books. I didn't know that black folks had done any great things.
These were the words of Dr. Indisha Ida Mae Holland, scholar, playwright, and civil rights activist, born dirt poor on August 29th in Greenwood, Mississippi. Cat, as she was called, had obstacles to confront even more devastating than poverty. One she was unaware of until her 11th birthday. She describes it and other experiences in her award-winning play From the Mississippi Delta.
I am so kind of excited. I'm 11 years old today, and for my birthday present, I'm going to the Walt Hall Picture Show later on today. Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence is responsible for me going to the show. I mean, they gonna pay me $2 for looking after their little grandgirl, little Miss Becky Ann. Now, the Lawrences, now they real nice people. They've been giving me $1 for looking after little Miss Becky Ann, but because it's my birthday, they're gonna add another $1. Oh, I'm gonna have me a good time at the picture show with Puddin' and the rest of my friends. Oh, today I'm gonna grab the bull by its horns. That means that you reach a crossroads in your life and you either throw the bull or the bull throw you.
Miss Lawrence picked me up at 9 o'clock. Little Miss Becky Ann is with her. Miss Lawrence now, got a great big house. It's white with big old poles running up and down. The doors is as wide as our whole house. The room is bigger than the playground. The walls is covered with cloth, and everywhere there's colored folks holding up things. Some of them so big they almost looks real. It's still the most beautifulest house I ever saw.
Gal, come on upstairs. Mr. Lawrence wants to see you. And Mrs. Lawrence said, and I didn't notice the stairs going up. It was that when I came down, that each design, each carving became forever etched in my being. Yes, Miss Lawrence, here I come. I got up on my tiptoes to walk across them shiny floors. I mean, if I put my big wide foot down, boy, flat, I might mark up the prettiest floor I ever saw. Miss Lawrence, here I is.
Miss Lawrence caught my hand and led me into the room. Mr. Lawrence was lying there in the big bed.
The covers on the bed, ooh, they look so smooth and silky. I wish Aunt Baby had a bedspread like this.
Miss Lawrence pushed me over to the bed.
The bull threw me. A little later, I stumbled down the stairs. The widest steps I ever saw.
The banister had tiny roses carved into a bouquet. In the middle of the polished wooden flowers was a small bud.
Reaching the last step in the tomb-like house, I paused and looked up. For the first time, I was looking through the eyes of a woman, an old woman. The picture show seemed childish to me. I feel grown up now that I got $5.
Oh, shoot. I'm a woman now. I ain't even gonna play with little Miss Becky no more. So I stood in the backyard, not too far from the car, and I waited for Miss Lawrence to come and
Take me home.
Extremely rare conditions, even at 11 years old, to form pearls that have that dark, eerily iridescent glow. Needless to say, Indisha May became a troubled child, a prostitute at 12, and mother at 15. She learned to depend on the kindness of strangers. It was on one such occasion that she sought out a stranger from the civil rights movement who had come to Greenwood. In an attempt to snare, she was snared by the movement, and her life was forever changed. Of this experience, she said,
I was already conscious of my inferiority, and I always remembered my place until the civil rights movement came to the town where I was born and grew up.
Impressed with the efficiency and businesslike approach of the African-American SNCC members, she volunteered her time to the cause. Her mother opposed her decision to get involved with the young protesters and feared a reprisal from the local white community, and for good reason. In 1965, a fire broke out in her home and killed her mother. Holland maintained that she believed the Klan firebombed her home in retaliation for her work with SNCC. She was 21 at the time of her mother's death.
Although manufacturers can dye pearls black, It takes extremely rare conditions to form pearls that have that dark, eerily iridescent glow. As a result of this experience, Holland's glow only grew brighter. She got more involved with the movement. She was arrested 13 times as a result of this involvement. She obtained her GED at the insistence of her SNCC colleagues.
She then went to the University of Minnesota, where she helped start the African American Studies Department and the Women Helping Offenders Program. She got her BA degree there in African American Studies in 1979. In 1981, she was awarded $1,000 for the National Lorraine Hansberry Award for the second best play in 1981. In 1984, she received her master's degree in American Studies from the University of Minnesota. And 20 years after leaving the Delta, she received her PhD in American Studies from the university as well.
Upon receiving her degree, also bestowed upon her was her Swahili name, Indisha, which means one who drives herself and others forward. She was given this name by Malana Karinga, founder and father of the International Kwanzaa celebration. She then taught at State University in Buffalo, New York, Michigan State, and at USC, where she retired in 2003. In her career, she wrote half a dozen plays, her most famous being From the Mississippi Delta. This play chronicled her path from childhood in the Jim Crow South into her successful adulthood. This play garnered her many prizes and awards, including a Pulitzer Prize nomination. Productions at the Goodman Theater in Chicago, the Circle in the Square in New York, and the Young Vic in London, among many other places around the world.
This shimmering black pearl was also featured in the PBS documentary Freedom on My Mind. On October 18th in Greenwood, Mississippi, they will celebrate Dr. Indisha Ida Mae Holland Day, which was declared in 1991 with her return home to receive the key to the city. Upon accepting the key on the steps of City Hall, she remarked that the last time she had been there, she was on her way to jail. At the age of 61, Dr. Holland died of ataxia, the same disease that had ravaged her mother up until her death. Gone but not forgotten, the playwright's words to her students still resonate today for us to pass on to others, especially the youth. Finally, if you're young, make a promise to yourself that you will never give up on your dreams. The world began when you were born. It will be whatever you make it.
I was born in Mississippi. I walked barefooted through the mud, born black in Mississippi. Walked barefooted through the mud, but when I reached the age of 12, I left that place for good. My dad, he chopped cotton, and he drank his liquor straight.
Oh, I left that Sunday morning. He was leaning on the barnyard gate. I left my mama standing with the sun shining in her eyes. I headed north as straight as the wild goose flies. Been to Detroit and Chicago, been to New York City too. Said I done strolled all over that funky avenue. I am still the same old black boy with the same old blues. Going back to Mississippi, this time to stay for good. Going back to Mississippi, this time to stay for good. Gonna be free in Mississippi or dead in the Mississippi mud.
A Poem for Myself, or Blues for a Mississippi Black Boy by Etheridge Knight. Guggenheim Fellow, a National Endowment for the Arts Fellow, a National Book Award, and Pulitzer Prize Award nominee. Instructor at the University of Pittsburgh, the University of Hartford, and Lincoln University. Korean War veteran, former heroin addict, and armed robber, prison poet, and most importantly, a dear friend who died too soon.
As I said earlier, We Beale Street writers met Etheridge in 1977 when he came to Memphis and landed in our home on Benton Street with cigarettes, beer, and a love of poets and poetry. Our main haunt was Bill's Twilight Lounge every Tuesday night, where we poeted, as Etheridge would say, to anyone who cared to listen or read.
It was at Bill's that Etheridge encouraged us to recite our poetry from memory
Taught us how to engage an audience.
and told us we didn't need music behind our poetry because our poetry had its own music worth listening to. Etheridge's history for us started 48 years before he met us in Corinth, Mississippi, where he was born on April 19, 1931.
The family moved to Paducah, Kentucky, where he went to school for a short period of time. And though a bright individual, he dropped out at 16, frequenting the local juke joints and pool halls. He learned the language of his people.
Constantly running away from home, he was sent back to Corinth to live with his uncle in 1947. He enrolled in the service during the Korean War, where he was severely wounded and suffered from PTSD.
This led him to begin using morphine. By the time Knight was discharged from the Army and returned to Indianapolis, where his family had moved, he had become addicted to opiates. He spent much of the next several years dealing drugs and stealing to support his drug addiction.
In 1960, after a few previous arrests, Etheridge and two of his buddies were arrested for armed robbery and sentenced to the Indiana State Prison. While in prison, he began reading as much as he could, and he especially enjoyed reading poetry. He also worked for the prison publication and began getting his poems published in it.
When Gwendolyn Brooks, poet laureate of Illinois, visited the prison, he met her and she encouraged him to keep writing, which he did. Soon, others outside the prison walls began taking notice of his work, including Dudley Randall, publisher of the Negro Digest, Sonia Sanchez, who he eventually married, and Haki Madhubuti. Randall eventually published Knight's first volume of verse, Poems from Prison, and hailed Knight as one of the major poets of the Black arts movement. Although manufacturers can dye pearls black, it takes extremely rare conditions to form pearls that have that dark, eerily iridescent glow.
So, in the late 70s to mid-80s, we were poets aglow from the night light. His wealth of talent illuminated the path for us to read throughout the South and beyond in bars, universities, parks, community centers, parking lots, anywhere people gathered, including prisons, even on death row.
Deborah Glass, a workshop member, was so taken by his writing that she compiled poetry and letters to and from him into a play called Night Songs. We toured that show as well.
Taped to the wall of my cell are 47 pictures, 47 black faces. My father, mother, grandmothers, one dead, grandfathers both dead, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, cousins, first and second, nieces and nephews. They stare across the space at me, sprawling on my bunk. I know their dark eyes. They know mine. I know their style. They know mine. I am all of them. They are all of me. They are farmers. I am a thief. I am me. They are thee. I have at one time been in love with my mother, one grandmother, two sisters, two aunts, one went to the asylum, and 5 cousins. I am now in love with a 7-year-old niece. She sends me letters written in large block print, and her picture is the only one that smiles at me.
I have the same name as one grandfather, 3 cousins, 3 nephews, and 1 uncle. The uncle disappeared when he was 15, just took off, caught a break. He is discussed each year when the family has a reunion. He causes uneasiness in the clan. He is an empty space. My father's mother, who is 93 and keeps the family Bible with everybody's birthdays and death dates in it, always mentions him. There is no place in her Bible for whereabouts unknown. Each fall, the graves of my grandfathers call me. The brown hills and red gullies of Mississippi send out their electric messages, galvanizing my genes. Just like a salmon quitting the cold ocean, leaping and bucking up his birth street.
I hitchhiked my way from L.A. with 16 caps in my pocket and a monkey on my back, and I almost kicked it with the kinfolks. I walked barefooted in my grandmother's backyard. I smelled the old land and the woods. I sipped corn whiskey from fruit jars with the men. I flirted with the women, and I had a ball till my caps ran out and my habit came down. That night, I looked at my grandmother and split. My guts were screaming for junk, but I was almost contented. I had almost caught up with me.
The next day in Memphis, I cracked a crocus crib for a fix. This year, there is a gray stone wall damming my stream. And when the falling leaves stir my jeans, I pace my cell or flop on my bunk and stare at 47 black faces across the space. I am all of them. They are all of me. I am me, they are thee, and I have no children to float in the space between.
Etheridge was an original. I have never met anyone like him, and if you met him, you would say the same thing. When he needed money, he'll sell his old car to more than just one person. When he didn't have a car, he borrowed one, like somebody in the workshop's brand new blue Datsun B210. Does the word total mean anything to you?
The Colt 45, drugs, and Pall Malls had taken control of our friend. Yes, our friend. Even the one with the totaled car. I say that unashamedly. Not only did this self-proclaimed meddler help us get our works in print, he told one publisher, if you don't publish them, you can't publish me. He also read the Dotsonless Poets poem, Colored People, wherever he appeared throughout the country. Most importantly, he enrolled us in his graduate course on life and poetry. For these things, I will always be grateful to this provocative and sensitive soul.
The skin of my poems may be green. Yes, sometimes wrinkled or worn. The snake shape of my song may cause the heel of Adam and Eve to bleed. Split my skin with the rock of love, old as the rock of Moses. My poems love you.
Richard Wright, Indisha Ida Mae Holland, and Etheridge Knight. 3 black pearls formed from extremely rare conditions of the rich black soil of the Mississippi Delta, which gave them their priceless, dark, eerily iridescent glow, never to be extinguished as long as someone remembers. To tell their stories.
Black pearls, most precious in the world. Let me pick you up where you belong. Black pearls, most precious in the world. You've been in the background much too long. You've been working so hard your whole life through, not getting the recognition or the praise and finances too. Hey, how about something for you long overdue? Here in my heart, you're gonna reign supreme. No longer invincible, baby. You're our kings and queens. It's our turn for happiness, and our day has come.